Hello, I'm Joe Licsauer of Kepler's Expert Investor, and today we'll be diving into one of the biggest forces shaping markets right now, and that is global technology. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Jeremy Gleeson, the lead portfolio manager of the Allianz Global High Tech Growth. Jeremy has been investing in the technology sector for a long time, vastly experienced, and is going to be walking us through some of the key themes that he and his team have identified that could potentially really push the sector over the next year and beyond. So Jeremy, it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to be talking to you today. Let's kick off with
Thank
AI.
you,
Everyone's talking about it. Why does it matter so much to tech investors at the moment?
Well, if you look at the history of the technology sector, every 10, 20 years, you get a new sort of wave of computing. Starting off with mainframes, moving on to mini computers, PCs, smartphones, and here we are at AI. So this isn't just the trend. This is a major paradigm shift in technology. And the interesting thing is that when there are these paradigm shifts, it's not just the direct companies who get impacted by it, but it impacts the entire industry and other industries as well. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And what we're seeing is the scale of adoption, which is really interesting with this one. So very recently, the CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy, wrote a letter to shareholders, and he noted that since its launch in November 2022, ChatGPT has now scaled to be serving 900 million weekly active users. This has gone from 0 to 900 million weekly active users, and it's still growing in the scope of just over 3 years.
And Jeremy, within the kind of tech sphere, the tech sector, we hear so much talk about tech cycles. And something I find quite interesting that has come up of late is the potential transition and the translation into a tech supercycle. And I'd really love to get your thoughts and dive a bit deeper into what that actually means in practice.
Yeah, so we have cycles and we have supercycles. Cycles tend to be product driven. So for example, every year Apple might come out with a new phone. Every so many years, Microsoft might come out with a new operating system. But a super cycle is when you have longevity of an underlying trend, which is, once again, sort of having an impact on a broader range of companies. So we know that this super cycle is having a significant impact on semiconductors. That's everything from GPUs and ASICs, but increasingly also the memory industry. We're seeing it have significant impacts on networking. In particular, a big area of growth is around optical networking, and that's a super cycle. This is when many different companies in many different spheres of the technology universe are being lifted up because of the significance of CapEx spending that's taking place.
And where are you in the team? Where would you in the team see the most opportunities at the moment, the value that this is creating in the sector?
Well, one of the things we tend to do is try to look to see where the bottlenecks are. And there was for a while a bottleneck in compute within this cycle, but that seems to have shifted already. So that shift now is being, the bottleneck seems to be around bandwidth. And that's coming in different ways as well. So one area of bandwidth is around memory bandwidth. We need more memory in order for these big, powerful AI computers to be able to handle processes, handle tasks quickly and effectively, and give the responses to the users. Another aspect is around networking. The data centers that host these AI compute environments can't all just be in one place. There just isn't the capacity in both land and power to have them all in one place. So they have to be in multiple places, and therefore you have to join these up. They all have to act and operate coherently with each other, and therefore you need very powerful, very fast networking to link all these computers and these servers and these data centers up. And so that's another area where there's a bottleneck. So those are two areas where we're very, very focused at the moment on. We think there's a lot of interesting things happening in memory. The three major manufacturers of memory, two of which are based in South Korea, have arguably not invested, or they've been under-investing in their capacity for some time. So they're playing a little bit of a catch-up now. And that is one sort of is supporting the future growth that they'll be able to deliver as they get more capacity online to manufacture more memory chips. But also is actually supporting what's another one of our themes is around semi-CapEx. There are more semiconductor manufacturing facilities being built, both for memory and for logic chips. And there is an increase in demand for that equipment, the providers of that equipment as well at the moment.
So Jeremy, one of the things that really interests me actually within the technology space is just the breadth of the opportunity set, particularly when you're looking beyond those traditional technology names. And I think that could be quite relevant to AI today. We hear so much about AI and there's a lot of dialogue and conversation around the topic. And it's often presented as a bit of AI as software. We're familiar with the models, the applications, and I think that's wonderful. But I often think that AI as it exists today in reality might be quite different without that physical backing, that physical infrastructure supporting the AI growth and development and innovation. And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on the physical side of AI, particularly the kind of impact on power and raw materials.
Sure. So the scale of AI of what we're seeing so far, the significant numbers being talked about in regards to the CapEx that's being deployed to provide the infrastructure is meaning that there's sort of pressure points on a variety of different aspects of what is needed to run these very powerful data centers, one of which is power. The result is that people have done calculations and realized that arguably that there is not enough power in certain parts of the world to support the requirements of the infrastructure spend that is going to take place over the next several years. And so people are looking at how those problems are going to be solved. I think it's very, very important. You have to have these discussions, but these are solvable problems. It might take time to solve, but the reality is that 5 years ago we weren't really talking about AI. Nobody building out the power grid was thinking about building out capacity for AI 5 years ago, but now it's happening. Now there are use cases. Now the technology has been proven. Now the acknowledgement of more power is needed. We are starting to see those investments take place. I mean, even the hyperscalers themselves are investing in their own power facilities. Much of it's renewable, but it is a problem, but it is a solvable problem. It will just take time.
And I guess for investors that aren't necessarily immersed in the world of technology, it would be great if we could bring that to life a little bit, because for some, they may have missed the link between data centers and AI and the power needed. And you mentioned a very interesting point there about, companies creating their own power sources and perhaps what opportunities that's now creating and value in the market.
Yeah, so, one aspect of it is the need to add more power to be able to fuel these data centers in the future. Another aspect actually is what typically happens with most technologies is that the first iteration of it is the least efficient iteration of a technology. And what will happen over time is that the technologies that go into data centers will become more efficient. So arguably a lot of that work's being done right now as well. And this involves things like different types of semiconductors. So typically when you're doing your first iteration, you're almost taking what's available, what's on the shelf. What do I not have to go and customize and make bespoke to be able to make this happen? And then by the time you get to your second or third iteration, you're thinking, actually, I've got the opportunity now to tweak some of the existing solutions to make them work even better for what I need, and therefore make those semiconductors more power efficient to be able to service the customer's needs without using as much power as the first generation.
And kind of reading between the lines there on some of your points, Are we saying this transition, this new technology that's really coming to the fore right now, is this bigger than just tech?
It is. I mean, that's typically what happens when you see these waves of compute come through, is it drags along a much broader scope of company than just the ones that you would think would be the usual suspects who would be the participants in a new opportunity. So definitely we're seeing companies throughout throughout a variety of different industries participate. It's been happening for some time within technology. And AI is just enhancing that. So, increasingly, the lines between the technology sector and other industries are becoming more and more blurred. I think industrial companies are one great example of that.
So there's been quite a lot of conversation, quite a lot of hype, quite a lot of dialogue around AI in recent years. And, that's ranged from the impact that it could have on industries and sectors alike, conversations around whether these AI leaders are expensive or cheap, given the attractive potential that they have on offer. But one thing that I find personally very interesting is, are we now in a position where we're seeing that move, that real, genuine move into the kind of real world economy? Are you and the team seeing that right now?
It feels like that's where we are as we go into 2026. I think a lot of us who have used some aspects of generative AI over the last few years have done it mostly on a sort of at a consumer level. Great examples out there of people using ChatGPT, for example, to help them plan their itinerary for their holidays. But what we've been noting is that enterprises across a variety of different sectors have been increasingly looking at bringing in AI into their everyday workflows, allowing their employees to get access to it. And we're starting to see some interesting data points come through now. So a company called Anthropic, which is a private company, is seen as being one of the leaders in enterprise AI. In December of last year, 2025, they cited that their annual revenue run rate was approaching or around about $9 billion. Just a few months later, they released the number fairly recently to say that that number is now around about $30 billion in annualized revenue run rate. I mean, that is immense growth. And that suggests that their customers, which are banks, retailers, insurance companies, pharmaceuticals, are utilizing their technology, deploying it, rolling it out to their employees. And that's why we're seeing that significant scale up in usage. So we think that we are about to see that kind of wow moment as enterprises adopt AI. And we'll start to see some results of that adoption of AI in the real world economy.
And I'm glad you mentioned in that there Anthropic, and also in the familiar AI model that we all seem to use on day-to-day lives is ChatGPT. One of the really interesting thoughts around that is their emergence, I think, is reminding investors that yes, the US has fantastic capabilities and exceedingly strong potential for innovation, but the emergence of these models, particularly like we saw last year with DeepSeek, is presenting investors with a whole wide range, a really breadth of opportunity outside of the US, beyond its shores. And I'd really like if you could delve into a little bit of that, where you and the team are seeing opportunities outside of the US.
Sure. It's coming from two ways. And you're absolutely right. The starting point is that the US has been a fantastic innovator and commercializer of technology over the decades. But what we're seeing here is two aspects. One is the success of the US companies has only come about because they've been able to tap into great partners on a global basis, help them with their entire supply chain. And here we're talking about companies that help make semiconductor chips, whether they're based in providing the equipment based in Holland, or actually making the chips themselves based in Taiwan. Companies making the memory chips based in South Korea. Even companies providing aspects of the technology based here in the UK. It's become really important, that entire supply chain, the success of that supply chain. The other aspect is that I think the world acknowledges that AI has got very, very powerful potential.
Okay.
And not every country in the world wants to be fully reliant on their AI technology on the successful US companies that we know of already. So increasingly, take, for example, China in particular, they are making sure that their homegrown talent is investing in AI and developing AI and scaling AI as well. So we've got companies such as Tencent and Alibaba in China, who are also already very successful companies and are now sort of putting AI at the very heart of what they're doing. And we've got new startup companies in China as well, companies like Minimax and DeepSeek, who are helping develop the technology too. So we're seeing that happen on a global basis as well.
And I think that's a really interesting point, particularly on the global supply chains, because one could almost be forgiven for overlooking how interconnected the wider technology sphere and ecosystem is. And I wonder if this is really where you and the team are seeing the technology come through to the real economy.
Yes, I think we're going to get more and more examples of AI in the real world economy going forward. I think we are literally at that sort of tipping point. I heard a great example. I went to a conference last year, and it was a very well-known pharmaceutical company talking at the conference, and they have deployed AI in their drug development workflows. And they talked about how much more agility and speed they have in the data analysis that they have to do at almost the start of any drug trial. They talked about how many data scientists it would take and how long it would take those data scientists before they had access to AI. And then now, with access to AI, it takes fewer data scientists and fewer hours to get the same results from the data processing, which basically means that that company has just increased the amount of resources it has for how many drugs or variations of drugs that it could be analyzing or scrutinizing at any one point in time, because every one of their employees in the data scientist team are being made so much more efficient by AI. I think we're going to hear many, many more examples like that as this year and next year progresses.
I just think that kind of scale, that kind of scope is just fantastic. It's such a transformative level that it's almost a bit hard to comprehend at times, but you'll know better than most that scale of this size or a transformative effect of this kind of technology, there are lots of positives, there are lots of things we can talk about in terms of impacts and potentials and growth opportunities, but one's obviously got to be mindful that it also brings up new risks and potential disruption. So with that in mind, what do you think investors should be mindful of at the moment?
This is new technology.
Yeah.
It is powerful technology. It is a case that people are experimenting for the first time. Unfortunately, there will be negative headlines written about this technology too. And sometimes, hopefully, some of those aspects will give the developers and the inventors pause for thought to think about what they're developing. Can they be doing it better? Should they be doing it differently? That's just an ongoing process with the emergence of any new technology. The other aspect is just to be mindful that with the emergence or the development of any technology is that progress is not always made in a perfect straight line. There will be periods where advancements seem to pause. There might be even periods of time where it feels like it's going backwards. And that's just normal for any sort of pathway for new technology. And the key there is very much to sort of be taking a long-term view and to also have a degree of patience with those developments as well. This is very powerful. It is very exciting. There has been a lot of breakthroughs, but the pace of innovation might not necessarily always follow the path that it's followed off over the last several years.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think that's been a really insightful discussion, and what strikes me is not just the breadth of opportunities and themes that you and the team have identified, but these are often quite complex parts of the world of technology, but the way you articulate them and really bring them into some relevancy and an understandable terms for the average investor, I think is absolutely crucial. From those super cycles that we spoke about to the importance of power and infrastructure and the adoption of AI in the real economy as well, I think it makes it very clear that the technology sector is ever evolving. It might not happen overnight, but the potential is there for many, many, many years to come. So just a very big thank you for walking us through those themes together. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
So for further information on the technology space, I would really encourage you to go to the Allianz Global Investors website, where Jeremy and his team publish a range of fantastic material that spans a broad range of insights and dynamics across the technology sector. You can also watch this discussion again and explore some of our research too on the Kepler Expert Investor platform. Thank you very much.